Hello, good morning, my dear friends. Today we are going to discuss here the industrial sectors and liberalizations. So this chapter is very interesting and also there is so many concepts. So I'm going to tell you here the concept and also with the facts and figures. Okay, please subscribe our channels and like and share to another. Okay, so today we start role of the industry in an economy. Most important points. So previously uh, we have addressed the agriculture sectors and its importance to the economy. The industrial sectors play an equally important role as it is the accelerate the growth of the economy, providing the self-reliance, employment, create a demand for the agriculture products and create a ripple effect. Okay, industry can create the township around them, thereby the creating the indirect employment. Industrialization is all about the focus on the industry and following them to meet the requirement of the economic beside, providing the linkage to the agriculture sector and also be the employment opportunity in the economic. This can be the achieved only through the higher industrial growth, which can be the provided the monuments to the overall the growth and also make it a sustainable future. The most important thing is there has been a missing link in India of the industrial and manufacturing sector. Despite the policy and the government focus not with the playing the role, the creating the linkage with industrial sectors, linkage with agriculture sector, and also creating the desire to employment opportunity. We all know about what is going on. So the service sector become a major contributor to the outputs of the rather than the manufacturing or the industrial sectors, such as the sectors of the compositions in favors of the service does not happen, but the once industry sector has achieved the level of the maturity, emerged the global competitive and service sector is the supporting the higher level of the growth of economy which has not been the happened in India. Let's understand a bit more closely. It implies the convergence of any raw material into the finished good or manufacture the activity products wide range of the goods which is required in the economy. Industry can also be the categorize. So first things, product. The basic industry means steel, yeah, cement. The capital goods industries means manufacturing of the plants and machinery. Intermediate goods and industry, uh, manufacturing of the dyes, tools, etc., etc. The consumer goods industries, manufacturing of the cars, scooter, fridge, TV, so many things, etc. Okay. The ownerships, the governments, the public sector, private sector, foreign sector, private or foreign, private sector, and public and private is the joint sector. The scale of investments and plant machinery, large industries, investment and plant machinery, medium industry and village cottage industry less than 10 lakhs, and medium is 1 to 10 crores. And small industry is 10 lakh to 1 crore. Okay, these are things. Last thing I will also tell you here, the capital or the labor intensive. The capital intensive industry means a large capital intensive in relation to the labor, but labor intensive industry is a large intensive of the labor in relation of capital. Okay, I hope you got it all the things. So we move on the public sector in India. First thing I will tell you here, the India started the journey of the industrialization during the second 5-year plans, 1955 and 56 to the 60. The patterns of the industry in India is also known the Mahalanobis model. Uh, the Indian scientists here, and with a setting of the basic of the capital goods industry by the government directly, strongly influenced by the Russian models of the state-run industries. The public sector in India, uh, the public sector in India, we are going to discuss here. So one may ask why the public sector was chosen for the industrialization. The post-independence, the India was deeply influenced by the Soviet Union, which has been the state, the run industry, and was to be the era of the socialism, and with a large role of the governments and production goods and service. Capitalism was associated with the exploitative, the tendency having the waste of the interest. Immediately after the independence, the private sector was virtually non-existent in India, and whatever the exist did not be have maturity and resources, technology, etc. The to the shoulders, the could getting in the responsibility of the industrializations, the government and its own levels, the technology and other such supports of the other country, which may not have the possible to otherwise. Even if it is a presume that the tax is the was interested to be the private sector, the industrialization would be the requirement of huge resources, technology supports, well-trained manpowers, which would not be the available within the then the private sector. Okay, so setting up the public sectors in India for the industrialization was the consequences well thought out in the deliberate. The decision given the magnitude of the responsibility and the need for the moving on the P industry predetermines the path of the industrialization. The role of the public sectors in India was clearly cut out the setup with the following objective. I will tell you. First objective is creating the significant capacity, means ability of to the products in basic good, basic and capital goods, and achieve the self-reliance in the core areas. Also be the facilitate the imports and the substitutes, attend to be the amendings and the high of the economics, and the becoming the drivers of industry growth of the catalyst of the accelerating, adapting the pre-labor technology, creating the employment opportunities, setting up the industries and the backward tribals areas. These things and better regional developments, self-contained townships, over covering of the residence, school, hospital, etc., etc. Public sector is also regulated the price by the governments, given the importance to be the economics and not the creating of the upward the spirals in price of the basic good. Okay, so 6 decades, 7 decades since the setting of the public sectors, it can be the means 6 decades, not 7, 6 decades. It can be the said they have the deliver and achieve the objective sum up. So I will tell you that the broadly they have the deliver and creating the significance and the capacities in all core areas and having to be achieve the self-reliance in all kind of the industry and goods require the any economies. Today the India can safely the claim that it is not dependent on any countries for its requirements of the industry and goods, and largely due to the public sector. They have the providing the gainfuls of the employment, and it has also be the facilitated the evolution of the private sectors and also be the responsible for the level of industrializations and industry maturity achieved. They can also be the credit for the making industry sectors drivers of the growth and the lifting of the overall the rate of growth. Okay, I hope you got it all the things. So now we industrial policy. This is the most important things in any industrial sectors, because industrial sector are even in the country any. If you create the any policy or any objective, it's the most important to the achieve that objective. We create the so many policy and schemes to for objective to achieve those objectives. Okay. So industrial policy, the role of the public sector and private sector. Overall, the direction of the industrial growth and the industrialization has been the guided by the various of the industries, and the policy of the government that has been the announced for the time to times and view the changing for the priorities starting from the 1948 onwards. However, clearly there are some of the landmark policies such as the industrial policy of the 1956, which has given the present characters of the public sector. Other is the industrialize the policy of the 1990. Okay, so industrial policy, the pre 1991. The first thing is the industrial sector was the highly regulated. The bureaucratic controls and subject to the restrict the license settings by the governments with needs for the license for the any industrial activity beside the needs of the compulsory and the registration before the commencement of the industry. Second is the policy of the 1956 brought to role of the public sector sharply by the observing as many of the 18 areas exclusively for the public sector. The certain of the area is the private sector was allowed, but object subject to be the requirement of the license and registration. However, the public sector could be also be the set up these areas if they deemed the necessary by the government. Third is the most of the critical importance area of the oil powers, heavy equipment, telecommunication, etc. exclusively in the domains of the public sector. Fourth is the bigger private companies were the highly be regulated through the monopolies and the restrictive the trade practice and acts are known as the MRTP. Okay, companies and the similarly the foreign companies are the regulated through the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, the FERA, and known as the FERA's companies. It was believed by the government that with a company grow in the size, it can be the resort, the monopolistic, the exploitative, the tendency as a result even after the license and the commencement of the business and private sector has seek to approval for the government for the capacity of the expansive and diversification of such a other business. Okay. I will also tell some of the things. The earlier of the policy with a view to give the public sector of the commanding the high and control over the key industries and service also private the way of the nationalization and take the over the private sectors, the coal minings, banking, insurance, textiles, mills. Earlier in the private sector were to the nationalize. The pre-1990 policy has the price of the regulated of the industries, goods and the price of the steels and cements and other basic goods and controlled by the government. Each of the every policy has the traced on the mixed economic character of the economy and which is coexistence of the public sector, public and private sector, but it's a reality it was heavily titled toward the public sector. Okay, the summarize like the pre-1991 policy has the highly regulated and the regimented the oriented the near the dominance of the public sector and the very limited space but bureaucratic control over the private sector company. Okay, so now we are moving the new policy of economics 1991. This is the most important policy for the India because that is the time we changes our Indian economics rule and regulation also be some of the other things, but that most important person is Manmohan Singh, Dr. Manmohan Singh, our ex prime minister. Okay, so he take a responsibility for the changing this new economics policy. So as mentioned to be the previously, this is the policy is known as beginning to economics reforms in India. Those the reforms were be the therefore this also be what they were changes in the effects but are not be not seen as the reforms made and the explicitity in policy in 1991 is also known as the new industrial policy and new economics policy and also known as the policy of liberalization or the end of the license and permit Raj. Even India is the bureaucratic controls over the functionings of the industrial sectors and the particularly private sectors. Okay. So policy aim as the greater freedom for the doing the business and outside of the government control the reduced to role of the public sector and deserving to the area large role for the private sector doing the way with a MRT and FERAS Act is the depending on the MTR and FERAS companies. This is toward the liberalization foreign investment policy and attract the foreign investment in the countries. The broadly the new economics policy and industrial policy has to be the three categories. One is the liberalization public sectors and foreign sector foreign investment. These three. Liberalization as the policy of the basically the dependence with earlier of the license and registration system is the providing the freedoms of the private sector set up to be the industries without the either to be the need for the license or the need for the registration. De-licensing was to be the most of the important aspect of the policy liberalization. Two areas, the autonomy, energy and railway, could not be the open for the private sector the participation. Even the while the doing the away with licensing systems of the certain critical area still be require the license, but open a private sector participation with following. First is the any kind of the firearms. Sorry for the slide is moved. Ammunition, station, explosive, and second is drugs and pharmaceutical. Third and the fourth is the defense equipment, and fifth is the all kind of the wines and cigarettes, spirit, and sixth is hazardous chemical. These things. So public sector and economic reforms is most important thing. I will explain. Don't worry. What is the public sector and economic reform? It is a widely be the perceived that policy is the 1991 has the clipped of wings of the public sector by the openings area which are be the reserved the exclusively for the public sector to the private sector. This is the not for the negative sense, but there would be a large role for the private sectors in the area which are the reserved earlier for the public sector. The policy of 1991 the reduced the area of reserve for the public sectors from the 18 to 5. Subsequently, in later years, the more sectors were the thrown open for the private sectors, the participation except for the atomic energy, railways, and those require the requiring a license. Further, no new policy public sector would be the setup and investment limited to the existing of the companies, and that forms in the internal accrual and accumulated the profit of the public sector. No fresh of the budgetary and the allocation would be the made in public sector except for the lossing making and stress in the public sectors in company. There has been requirement for the greater profession characters by the public sectors in the appointed and the board of director and the public sector would be only for the professional. The chief executive of the public sectors would, were made and accountable. Sorry, chief executive of public sector were to be the accountable for the performance and the performing. The public sector were to be the given the greater economics. They're the day to day and operation. Okay, so these things we discussed today. All the important things. I hope tomorrow we will discuss the disinvestment, privatizations, and role of public sectors and future. Okay, thank you friends. Subscribe, like, share it.